and you're from Canada, which is one of my favorite places on earth. So
That's awesome.
Yeah, dude, it's a beautiful place, isn't it?
Have you been to the part where we are from, British Columbia?
No, but I know you make great weed.
Yeah, that was our big, when weed was illegal, it was still the biggest export in our province.
BC Bud.
Yeah, and they think we're lying when we say this, but we live not in Vancouver, but on a place called Vancouver Island, and we truly are from an island off the coast of
It's beautiful.
Canada, and you can only get there by boat or by airplane. It sounds smaller than it is. Like, it's a very big island, and there's like 1 million people on it, but you can't drive off it. You have to go on a ferry boat or a plane.
There is something to that way of life that is different.
It is. It's very isolating because you don't realize you live on an island until you're like trying to get off the island or trying to get back on the island.
Yeah, you kind of think like not having an Apple store is normal, but that's not normal. Like every other city has an Apple store. It's like, why don't we have one?
But
makes no sense.
So Michael was born there.
Mm-hmm.
I moved there when I was 15, actually, from Alabama. But I think when we were teenagers is when you really realize that, and for us especially, like discovering that we really liked going to concerts and playing music and then having dreams of going on tour, it makes you realize there's like an extra island tax that you have to pay to go do those things because it's very expensive to get off the island. No bands really come to the island. It's a very large event if a big artist were to ever go there. So Michael you started touring first before I did, and you kind of had to learn that it's very different when you live on an island.
When I was 16, I went on my first tour, and then I started realizing how different the island was compared to most of Canada. So
we're not exposed to as much art and
no, definitely not.
At least our music scene.
Interesting. But yeah, because things just can't get there.
Yeah.
But also going from Alabama to an island in Canada, that's a different world. We're in Alabama.
Jacksonville, Alabama. So I lived like
Crazy.
an hour and a half away from Atlanta. That was the biggest culture shock. And it was also like very validating to me as a kid because I think I just didn't really fit in with a lot of the very like conservative values of a lot of my friends and their families. But I was really stressed out to move because I already had my little life that I built there. And I was so pissed off that I had to move to Canada because I moved there with my mom because she fell in love with my stepdad who lives on Vancouver Island. And we all had to pack up and go with her. And I was so pissed off. But I remember my uncle who lived in California, he was like, this is the best thing that ever happened to you. And I was like, no, when I'm 18, I'm moving back here. And he was like, no, you won't. So sorry, Alabama. I'm not trying to, be rude to you, but it's tough growing up there when you're 15 and you don't think that, the Lord is going to smite you because like you're a girl and you kissed another girl. So it's nice to get out of there if that's your vibe.
That gave me goosebumps. Your uncle knew.
He
and
knew.
Also like going to that island would ultimately change your life.
Yeah, because then I met this guy.
That is true.
How soon after arriving in Canada do you guys meet?
We know the exact date we met because we played a show together.
We met in 2008, and we played a show at a Canvas bookstore. It was like
It was an anarchist bookstore.
It was called Canvas Bookstore, wasn't it?
It's called Camus, the philosopher.
There you go, yeah. So it was an anarchist bookstore. We played a show to like, I don't know, 20 kids in this little shop. And I'll never forget when I first met her.
It was June 11th, right?
It was June 11th.
Yeah, June 11th, 2000.
I think I still have the flyer, too.
Yeah, we have the flyer for it.
And it was great. My band was playing. Her band was playing. I'd never seen her before. And her first band had her brother in it, their best friend and everything, and her boyfriend at the time. And I got to watch them play, and I was just blown away. And then we went on after. And
He was 16, and I was like 18 or 19. I wasn't like, wow, that 16-year-old boy is sure gonna marry that guy. I just was like, oh, look at him go. So,
I'm doing it.
Yeah, I just for the record, it was many, many years later that I was like, He's a man. He's a man now.
Time had passed.
Time did pass.
When you're a kid and you're experiencing the difference in culture and lifestyle between two different countries, what is the biggest, most glaring thing that you pick up?
The biggest thing was just realizing that the U.S. is not the center of the universe and is not, the greatest. I feel like at least where I lived, that was what was really like part of my education. It was that like America is the best place on earth. It's the best country in the world. We're better than everyone else. And the world, lives and breathes by what we do. And it's not really important to educate myself on the rest of the world because this is the center of the universe. That's just kind of how I felt there. And then moving to another place and seeing that there's a whole other world and a whole other, reality outside of just what the country I'm from does. Obviously, a lot of stuff does have like the ripple effect by what we do here.
Totally.
Politically and like, just from a economic standpoint. But moving away from there and realizing that there was like disdain for the country I was from and like resentment and a whole other history that I never got to learn, whether it was from like wars or, or something like that. I just always like the America World Police song is like kind of the propaganda that I was fed as a kid.
Meanwhile, we had Blame Canada, so
Yeah.
both kind of go, hand in hand.
Remember the Blame Canada song?
Blame Canada, South Park.
Wait, oh yeah. Oh my God, yeah. That's
Yeah.
so funny.
So I don't know. There's just like an air of like.
That's so nostalgic. What?
Yeah.
It's been a long
So the
time
Team
since
America
I-
World Police song for me.
Yeah, Blame Canada
And the
for
Blame
us.
Canada song for him.
Yeah.
It's really interesting because, like, one, Canada gives you guys each other, right? And a whole new outlook and perspective. But also the government really supports art. And it's weird. In all the prep that we've done on you guys, we found the figure that you got from the government to even kickstart a tour. I mean, like, they have things that just, like, it doesn't exist here.
Yeah.
That was a whole thing.
It's a big thing to get
Yeah.
that. Like, not every artist gets that. It's very, I would say, 1.5% of artists would get these grants. And unfortunately, we never really took advantage of it because we then, obviously this is a great problem to have, but we then signed to a U.S. label and it took off from there and we could no longer use those resources.
But it did its thing, right?
Yeah.
Like, it gave you the money when it needed to create a cultural export, right? Like, the goal is not to hold you in Canada forever.
Yeah.
The goal is for you to sign a record deal in America and for everybody to know that you're Canadian.
Unfortunately for them, that all went down and happened in March of 2020. So when we took that tour and everything, it was like, all right, well, now we're screwed. But Courtney worked really hard to get the first grant. She probably wrote, I don't know how many times you wrote it over, like 3 or 4 times.
Yeah, but I was lucky because our friend Noah, his band had gotten the grant, so he
helped us.
He helped me a lot.
Yeah.
I was like, copy the homework, but make it look slightly different.
So what do you actually have to do to get it? Is it just fill out forms? Is it?
Yeah, you have to like present. It's like you have to present your band. You have
Yeah.
to be like, this is a good investment.
Yeah, because they're
Here's
funding
why.
your touring and stuff like that, recording sessions, all of it.
Yeah,
They're being a label.
yeah, and so
It's so cool.
it's awesome. I mean, having that, I wish I had taken full advantage of it, but I couldn't. But it's not something that's just for small bands. The thing that we did was like a developing artist thing. But any large band from Canada, if they could use it. I mean, technically, like Justin Bieber could still use it if he wanted.
But also, people, may not know this, but like the radio stations and the media are pro-Canadian.
You
So
have
like,
to play 33% Canadian content.
Canadian
though.
content.
and that could be either produced by a Canadian, written by a Canadian, performed by a Canadian. I was on the radio all over Canada. It's just really interesting and it's really special. And I think like the U.S. can learn a lot because like we don't have any sort of support, right? Like forget grants, like everything is very heavily commercialized and money driven. So it's really interesting.
it's kind of like a good way to like have pro Canadian content, like ambassadors. A lot of countries do this because it's harder to break into
Oh yeah.
any sort of, the market is the entertainment industry is the U.S. So.
When you're a kid and you grow up and you listen to a lot of these bands, like you think that they're like the biggest bands on the planet because they're always on the radio, they're always on TV, but they're all Canadian bands. So like they're required to do X amount of percentage of it, which is great. But it's funny, like later on, you kind of think about it and you're like, wait a minute, like they're doing arenas in Canada, but they're playing clubs in America. Why is that? And it's like, well, there's your answer.
But there's something really special to that though,
Yeah.
because then the right ones end up breaking, and then cultural export is soft power, and it's all like deeply connected. And I know we're talking a lot about home, but it is connected to the album that we're getting in March, because
Yeah.
it is about this island that you grew up on.
Yeah, it's like the pull, it's like the gravitational pull back to it, and then the like that's the wave going in, and then there's like the always trying to escape it, like physically and mentally. It's just a constant drive. It's been a constant drive for us since we were old enough to understand what we wanted to do for our jobs and our careers, and we understood what that was at a relatively young age, probably compared to other people.
Yeah, it's so odd because it is such a beautiful place, but I think there is something about it that's like a total bubble, And I think when you realize like, maybe we need to actually play outside of this area. Maybe we need to actually branch out and do stuff in the States or whatever. Those bands are obviously going to be a lot more successful and be able to do more stuff, but a lot of people kind of just feel comfortable in being on the island or just doing Vancouver or something like that. So, and I think the reason why is that it ties in with a lot of themes of the record is that it is just such a incredible place. There's something kind of hypnotizing about it for sure.
Yeah. And I think everyone has those difficulties if they live in a small town. It's like a mental barrier to leave. And then ours is just like, it's like a mental and physical barrier to leave. So it feels like, you can't just drive out a couple hours to go see your favorite artist or a band that you realize is similar to you, and then you can network. Like you have to use a lot of time and money to leave it.
But you do eventually reach a point where you want to go back. Like you yearn the feeling of home.
We've had conversations recently.
Yeah, I miss it. But I think that a lot of people that are artists, like once they move to a place where there's a lot of people that are trying to do the same thing they are, trying to, your ultimate dream is to get to live off of your art and make a living off of art, whatever it is, whether it's like music or acting. So it's nice here because we don't have to like, I feel like when we're meeting people, we don't have to like
Explain ourselves.
explain our goals or validate our goals. And then when you're from, our joke is we call it, how's your little band doing?
Yeah.
They're like, when
Oh,
we're,
you're still doing that?
when we're back there, we have to, you shouldn't have to feel like you're validating yourself, but subconsciously, at least, we're like trying to validate and set like an expectation when we're talking to people of like what it is that we do.
Yeah.
Because they don't understand.